The room fell silent when Elara Whitcomb stood up. Not because anyone respected her, they didn't, but because what she was about to say would either destroy her completely or shatter every lie they'd built their lives on. "You want to know the truth about Lord Blackthorn?" Her voice cut through the ballroom like a blade. "Then you'd better brace yourselves, because when I'm done, half of you won't have a reputation left to hide behind." Her sister gasped. Her mother went pale. And Dorian Blackthorn, the man they were all trying to bury, smiled. "But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let me tell you how a girl nobody saw coming became the woman nobody could ignore. Stick with me until the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment with your city. Let's see where you're watching from." The Whitcomb estate smelled like old money and older secrets. Elara learned that early. Learned it the way you learn that fire burns or winter bites, through repeated, inevitable contact. She was 8 years old the first time her father looked straight through her at dinner, asking her mother if the girls were coming down soon, while Elara sat 3 feet away with a book in her lap. "Just Celeste, dear," her mother had said, not even glancing Elara's direction. "The other one is, well, she's already here." The other one. That became her name in the household. Not officially, of course. On paper, in the family Bible, in the ledgers that tracked bloodlines like racehorses, she was Elara Margaret Whitcomb, second daughter of Lord Theodore Whitcomb, heir to a fortune built on land grants and strategic marriages going back 6 generations. But in practice, in the day-to-day machinery of aristocratic life, she was the other one. The spare. The mistake. By the time she turned 16, Elara had stopped expecting anything different. She'd watched her sister Celeste glide through life like a swan on an ornamental pond, graceful, admired, utterly certain of her place in the world. Celeste had their mother's golden hair and their father's sharp cheekbones, and when she entered a room, conversations paused. Men straightened their posture. Women adjusted their jewelry, suddenly aware they were being measured. Elara, on the other hand, had inherited their grandmother's dark hair, their uncle's forgettable face, and absolutely nobody's attention span. "You're being dramatic," Celeste told her once, 16 years old and trying on gowns for her first real season. "Mother and father love you just as much as me. They're just busy." Elara had been sitting in the corner, reading. Again, always reading. "Sure," she'd said, not looking up. "That's why they forgot my birthday last week." "They did not—" Celeste stopped, her face going uncertain. "Did they?" "March 7th. I turned 16. The cook remembered. She made me a small cake and ate half of it with me in the kitchen." Celeste opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. I'm sorry. I should have remembered too." "Don't worry about it. You were busy." And she had been. Celeste was always busy. Dancing lessons, deportment coaches, social calls, garden parties. Being groomed for the marriage market like a prize heifer, though Elara would never say that out loud. It wasn't Celeste's fault that she was beautiful, and Elara wasn't. Wasn't her fault that the world had rules, and those rules said pretty girls became wives and mothers and hostesses, while plain girls became, well, whatever they could manage. Governesses, maybe. Companions to elderly relatives. Spinster aunts living on family charity, tolerated but never quite welcome. Elara had made her peace with it. Mostly. The library became her country, her kingdom, her escape route from a world that had no use for her. The Whitcomb estate had a good one. 3 stories of books accumulated over generations. Everything from agricultural treatises to French philosophy to scandalous novels hidden behind respectable spines. Elara read them all. Well, not all, but close enough. She read about mathematics and stars. She read about revolutions and wars. She read about women who disguised themselves as men to fight, to explore, to escape marriages they didn't want. She read about places where maybe, just maybe, someone like her could matter. Still hiding in here? Elara looked up from her book, an account of the Peninsula Wars, actually interesting, to find her father standing in the doorway. He looked uncomfortable, like he'd wandered into the wrong room and was too polite to immediately leave. "Just reading, Father?" "Yes, you're always reading." He said it like an accusation. "Your mother thinks you should spend more time with Celeste. Learning. Whatever it is young ladies learn." How to simper. I think I missed that lesson. His face tightened. "Don't be clever, Elara. It's unbecoming." Apologies, I'll try to be stupid instead. I'm sure that's much more attractive. That's enough. He took a step into the library, and for a moment she thought he might actually engage with her, might actually have a conversation. But then his eyes drifted to the window, to the gardens beyond where Celeste was probably entertaining suitors, and his attention evaporated. Just try to make an effort, for your mother's sake. He left without waiting for an answer. Elara went back to her book. The years stacked up like that, one small dismissal after another, each one barely noticeable on its own, but accumulating into a weight that pressed down on her shoulders, her spine, her sense of self. She learned to move quietly through the house, learned which hallways to avoid during calling hours, learned to make herself scarce when her parents entertained, because questions about the other daughter always carried an edge of pity that made her want to scream. She turned 18, 19, 20. Celeste married a baron's son in a wedding that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. Elara stood in the back during the ceremony, watching her sister glow with happiness, and felt something complicated twist in her chest. Not quite jealousy, not quite relief that it wasn't her up there, promising her life away to a man she barely knew. Something else. Something like grief for a future she'd never really wanted but had been denied anyway. "You'll be next," Aunt Margaret whispered, squeezing her hand. Elara didn't bother answering. They both knew it was a lie. After the wedding, things got quieter. Celeste moved to her husband's estate 3 counties away. The house felt bigger, emptier. Elara's parents seemed to forget she existed more thoroughly than ever, now that their primary project was complete. She had whole weeks where no one spoke to her beyond the servants. She told herself she preferred it. She told herself she was fine. She told herself a lot of things that were easier than the truth. The truth was that loneliness had teeth, and they were getting sharper. The truth was that she was 23 years old and starting to understand that this was it. This was her life, and it would continue exactly like this until she died. Quiet, overlooked, unnecessary. The truth was that she'd started having thoughts about leaving, about taking what little money she had and disappearing to London or Edinburgh or somewhere even farther where nobody knew her name and nobody cared that she was plain and strange and too clever for her own good. But she never did. Because where would she go? What would she do? The world wasn't kind to women without family, without money, without protection. She knew that. She'd read enough to know exactly how that story ended. So she stayed. And she read. And she waited for something, anything, to change. It was a Tuesday in late April when Dorian Blackthorne arrived. Elara was in the garden, technically. The forgotten corner of the garden where the old roses had gone wild and nobody bothered to trim them back. She'd brought a book. She always brought a book. And a blanket to sit on. And she'd been perfectly content for the last 2 hours reading about crop rotation techniques. Fascinating stuff, actually. The way you could restore soil health by alternating plantings, the mathematics of yield over time. She didn't hear the horse approach, didn't realize she wasn't alone until a shadow fell across her page. That's a strange choice for pleasure reading. Elara's head snapped up. The man standing above her was tall. That was the first thing she registered. Tall and dark-haired and wearing riding clothes that had seen actual use, not the decorative kind gentlemen wore when they wanted to look sporty. His face was hard angles and old scars, one cutting through his left eyebrow, another along his jaw. His eyes were gray, the color of winter storms. He looked dangerous. He looked real in a way most of the men in her social circle didn't. "Can I help you?" Elara asked, hearing the frost in her own voice. "I doubt it. I'm looking for Lord Whitcomb. Was told I might find him here, but apparently I was misinformed." His eyes dropped to her book. "Unless you're him, and this is a very elaborate disguise." "Hilarious, the house is that way." She pointed without looking, already annoyed. "I'm sure someone will show you in." "Probably." But he didn't move. "You're reading about agriculture." "Brilliant deduction." "Why? Why not?" He laughed, a short, surprised sound. "Fair enough. Most people need a better reason than that. Most people are boring." "Can't argue with that." He studied her for another moment, and Elara felt something strange happen. He was actually looking at her, not through her, not past her, not with the vague discomfort of someone who'd forgotten her name. He was seeing her. It was deeply unsettling. "Dorian Blackthorne," he said, offering his hand. Elara considered not taking it, considered telling him to run along to the house and leave her alone. But curiosity won out, the way it always did. "Elara Whitcomb." She shook his hand. His grip was firm, calloused, a working man's hand. "The other daughter, in case you were wondering." "The other—" he frowned. "Other than who?" "My sister Celeste, the beautiful one, the important one, the one who actually matters." She hadn't meant to say all that, hadn't meant to sound quite so bitter, but something about this stranger made her walls crack, just a little. Blackthorne's expression shifted, became something sharper. "I see. And you're the one hiding in the garden reading about farming techniques." "I'm not hiding, I'm reading. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Yes. Hiding implies I care what they think. I don't." "Liar." The word hit her like a slap, not because it was cruel, but because it was true. "You don't know me," Elara said, closing her book with more force than necessary. "No, but I know that expression, seen it in the mirror often enough." He crouched down, bringing himself closer to eye level. "You can lie to them, can't lie to me. And you definitely can't lie to yourself, though I'm guessing you've been trying for years. Who the hell do you think you are? Someone who recognizes a fellow exile when he sees one." He stood back up, brushed dirt from his knee. "Your father's expecting me. Some business about buying the north parcel. I'm sure it'll be terribly dull." "Then why are you here?" "Because I need the land and he needs the money, and we'll both pretend it's something nobler than that." He touched his hat, a casual gesture that somehow felt more respectful than all the bowing and scraping she'd seen in ballrooms. "Pleasure meeting you, Elara Whitcomb. The other daughter." He walked away before she could respond. Elara sat there, book forgotten in her lap, and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Interested. Dinner that night was excruciating. Elara's mother had insisted she attend. "We have a guest, and it would be rude to have an empty chair," which meant Elara was trapped at the table while her father negotiated with Blackthorne and her mother made the kind of small talk that could numb your brain into submission. "So you've been abroad, Lord Blackthorne?" "Not a lord, just Blackthorne." He cut his meat with the efficiency of someone who'd spent time in military camps. "And yes, 10 years on the continent, army mostly." "Oh, how exciting. Did you see much action?" Elara watched him pause, fork halfway to his mouth, watched something dark cross his face before he locked it down. "Enough." Her mother missed the tone entirely. "Well, we are so glad you've returned home. England needs strong men like you. Don't you think so, Mr. Whitcomb?" "Quite," Elara's father said, barely paying attention. He was already calculating, she could tell, already trying to figure out how to squeeze every penny from this sale. "Your family's estate borders ours to the north. The Blackthorne lands have been empty for, 15 years? 17, since my father died." "Yes, tragic business that. And you're back to reclaim it?" "To rebuild it. Ambitious. The house is practically a ruin from what I've heard." "Then you've heard correctly." Blackthorne took a drink of wine, his expression giving away nothing. "But ruins can be fixed, with enough time and money and stubbornness." "Is that what you have, time and money?" "I have stubbornness. The rest I'm working on." Elara's father smiled, the expression of a shark who'd smelled blood. "Well, perhaps we can help each other. The north parcel isn't doing us any good just sitting there, and you clearly need—" "Father!" Everyone turned to look at Elara. She could feel her mother's glare like a physical weight. "Yes?" Her father's voice was ice. "The north parcel has the old mill and the water rights." She kept her voice level, academic, like she was discussing crop rotation instead of torpedoing her father's negotiation. "It's worth considerably more than I think you're planning to offer." Silence. Then Blackthorne laughed, a real laugh this time, surprised and genuine. "She's right. I was hoping you wouldn't remember that." Her father's face had gone red. "Elara, this is not—" "It's fine." Blackthorne waved a hand. "She's absolutely right. I was trying to rob you blind and she caught me. That's good business sense." He looked at Elara and there was approval in his eyes. Respect. Your daughter knows her property values. She reads too much, her mother said, as if that explained everything wrong with the world. Can't read too much, Blackthorn said. Reading's how you learn what everyone else has already figured out. Saves time. I suppose, her mother said, clearly lost. The rest of dinner crawled by. Elara kept quiet, but she could feel Blackthorn's attention on her, intermittent and assessing. It was strange, uncomfortable, novel. When the meal finally ended and her parents excused themselves to discuss business in private, Elara tried to slip away to the library, but a voice caught her in the hallway. That was well played. In there. She turned. Blackthorn was leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed, looking entirely too comfortable in someone else's house. I wasn't playing anything. I was telling the truth. Same thing sometimes. He pushed off the wall, walked closer. Why'd you do it? Help me, I mean. Your father looked ready to murder you. He always looks like that when I speak. I'm used to it. Elara crossed her arms, mirroring his posture. And I didn't help you. I just didn't like watching him cheat. Even if it's a stranger getting cheated? Especially then. You can't defend yourself. You don't know the land. So you're what? An advocate for wandering soldiers with more ambition than sense? Maybe I'm just bored and this was more interesting than watching my mother pretend to care about your military service. He grinned. She was doing a terrible job of that, wasn't she? Awful. You could see her mentally redecorating before you even finished talking. Noticed that too, did you? They stood there in the hallway, and Elara realized with a start that she was enjoying this. This strange, sparring conversation with a man she'd met 6 hours ago. It felt real in a way most interactions didn't, like they were speaking the same language nobody else in this house understood. Why are you really here? She asked. You don't need this land. You've got the whole Blackthorn estate to rebuild. This parcel's a luxury at best. Clever and observant. Dangerous combination. He studied her face like he was trying to solve a puzzle. You're right. I don't need it. But it borders my property, and having friendly neighbors is worth the investment. My father isn't friendly. No. But maybe his daughters are. Elara felt heat rise in her cheeks and immediately hated herself for it. My sister's married, lives 3 counties away. I wasn't talking about your sister. The words hung in the air between them. I'm not, Elara started, then stopped. Wasn't what? Wasn't interested? Wasn't available? Wasn't the kind of woman men made implications about? All of those things were probably true, but she couldn't make herself say any of them. You should go, she said instead, before my father decides to charge you for breathing his air. Blackthorn laughed, but he moved toward the door. Probably right. But I'll be back. The sale's not finished, and your father drives a hard bargain. That's because I told him what it's worth. Yeah, thanks for that. He paused at the door, looked back. Do you ride? What? Horses. Do you ride them? Yes? Why? Because tomorrow I'm surveying the parcel. Thought you might want to come along. Since you clearly know more about it than I do. Elara's heart did something complicated in her chest. That's not proper. Probably not. Is that a no? She should say no. Should tell him to go away and leave her alone and stop looking at her like she was someone worth noticing. Should protect herself from the inevitable disappointment when he realized she was just as boring and forgettable as everyone else thought. 9 o'clock, she heard herself say. The stable yard. Don't be late. He smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes and made him look younger, less damaged. Wouldn't dream of it. He left. Elara stood in the empty hallway and wondered what the hell she'd just agreed to. But she also couldn't stop smiling. For the first time in years, tomorrow felt like something worth waking up for. She didn't sleep. Elara lay in bed watching shadows crawl across her ceiling, listening to the house settle around her, and thought about all the reasons this was a mistake. The list was long, comprehensive, convincing. Going riding with a strange man, unchaperoned, scandalous. Encouraging his attention when she had nothing to offer him, foolish. Getting her hopes up that someone might actually see her as more than the disappointing spare, pathetic. By the time dawn crept through her windows, she'd talked herself out of going at least 6 times. She went anyway. The stable yard was quiet at 9, just the soft sounds of horses moving in their stalls and the smell of hay and leather. Elara had dressed practically, her old riding habit that her mother kept threatening to throw out, worn boots that had been resoled twice. She felt like a fraud standing there, waiting. He probably wouldn't show up, probably forgot the whole thing, probably... You came. Blackthorn emerged from the stable, leading 2 horses, and Alara's heart did that stupid, complicated thing again. He looked different in full daylight, the scars more visible, the gray in his hair more pronounced, older than she'd first thought. 35 maybe? 40? Hard to tell with men who'd seen combat. I said I would. People say a lot of things. He handed her the reins to a chestnut mare. This is Maple. She's gentle but not stupid. Seemed like your speed. Elara ran her hand down the mare's neck. And yours? Brutus. He's an ass with boundary issues, but we understand each other. The black gelding tossed his head as if to confirm. You ready? Are you always this suspicious of people keeping their word? Yes. He swung into the saddle with the ease of someone who'd spent years on horseback. Usually I'm right. They rode out in silence, following the old cart path that wound north through the estate. The morning was cool, the sky that pale blue that promised heat later. Elara hadn't ridden in months. Her parents saw no point in maintaining horses for someone who wasn't being paraded at social events, and it felt good to move, to have a purpose beyond sitting quietly in corners. Your father wasn't happy about yesterday, Blackthorn said after they'd cleared the main grounds. My father's never happy. It's his natural state. He tried to increase the price after you left, said you'd been mistaken about the water rights. Elara's hands tightened on the reins. Of course he did. I told him I'd have my solicitor verify everything before we signed anything. He didn't like that much either. Blackthorn glanced at her. You realize you probably cost yourself any remaining goodwill in that house? There wasn't any to begin with. The words came out harder than she'd intended. I'm the daughter who didn't take, the crop that failed. They'll barely notice I contradicted him. I noticed you seemed to believe that. It's not belief. It's observation. They rode in silence for a while. The path narrowed, forcing them closer together, and Elara was acutely aware of him beside her. The way he sat a horse, the economy of movement, the constant scanning of their surroundings like he expected ambush. Were you cavalry? She asked. Infantry. But you learn to ride when you're trying not to get killed. He nodded toward a break in the trees ahead. The mill's through there? Yes, though it hasn't operated in years. The wheels probably rotted through by now. But when they reached the clearing, the old mill was still standing. Barely. The wooden structure leaned to one side like a drunk trying to find his balance, and the water wheel was frozen in place, half submerged in the stream that had once powered it. Vines covered everything. Blackthorn dismounted, walked to the edge of the water. The stream feeds into the river? Eventually, about 2 miles downstream. Elara stayed on her horse, watching him assess the property. Why do you want this land, really? I told you, you told me what you wanted me to hear. I'm asking for the truth. He turned to look at her, and something shifted in his expression. You don't pull punches, do you? Life's too short for dancing around things. Fair enough. He walked back toward her, leaned against a tree. My father's estate is bankrupt. Has been for years. The house is falling apart, the tenants are gone, and the land's been sitting empty so long it's practically reverted to wilderness. I've got enough from my service to start rebuilding, but not enough to finish. This parcel gives me water access, which means I can power a mill, which means I can process grain, which means I can actually make the estate profitable again. So it's not about friendly neighbors. No, it's about survival. He met her eyes. I'm one bad harvest away from losing everything my family built. This land is the difference between making it and going under. Elara absorbed that, the honesty of it, the vulnerability he was showing her that she suspected he showed very few people. My father will bleed you dry if he knows that, she said quietly. I know. So why tell me? Because you asked, and because... He stopped, seemed to reconsider. You're different from the others. You actually see things as they are instead of how you want them to be. That's not a compliment in my world. It is in mine. They stood there in the clearing, the ruined mill between them, and Elara felt something dangerous taking root. Hope. Interest. The beginning of trust. The water rights are complicated, she heard herself say. My grandfather traded them back and forth with the Ashford estate for years. There's documentation in the library, old ledgers, contracts. If you want to make sure you're actually getting what you're paying for, you should review them. Your father would never let me into the library. My father doesn't know what's in half those books. I do. She took a breath. I could show you if you wanted. Blackthorn's expression went very still. That's practical, nothing more. Elara forced her voice to stay level even though her pulse was hammering. You need information. I have access. It's a fair trade. Your reputation doesn't exist. I'm invisible, remember? No one will notice or care. That wasn't entirely true, and they both knew it, but he didn't contradict her. Tomorrow? He asked. Tomorrow. They rode back slowly, taking a different path that wound through the older parts of the estate. Blackthorn asked her about the land, the history, the families who'd held it before the Whitcombs. She found herself talking more than she had in months, maybe years. Found herself explaining things she hadn't realized she knew. The patterns of ownership, the way marriages had consolidated properties, the careful dance of power that had shaped this little corner of England. He listened like her words actually mattered. It was intoxicating. You should have been the heir, he said as they approached the stable yard. You've got a better head for this than most men I've met. Unfortunately, I have the wrong anatomy for inheritance. Unfortunately, he agreed. They dismounted. A stable boy appeared to take the horses, giving Elara a curious look that she ignored. Tomorrow the gossip would start, the strange Whitcomb girl riding alone with the scarred soldier. But tomorrow felt very far away. Thank you, Blackthorn said, for the tour and the education. Thank you for not being boring, he laughed. Low bar. You'd be surprised how many people can't clear it. She turned to go, but his voice stopped her. Elara, she looked back. I meant what I said. You're different. Don't let them convince you that's wrong. Her throat went tight. She managed a nod, didn't trust herself to speak, and walked away before she did something stupid, like cry. That night at dinner, her mother was waiting. I heard you went riding this morning. Elara cut her meat carefully. I did. With that Blackthorn man. Yes. Unchaperoned. There weren't any chaperones available. I improvised. Her father looked up from his plate, face darkening. You what? I showed him the north parcel. Since you're negotiating the sale, I thought it would be helpful for him to actually see what he's buying. Elara kept her voice bland, reasonable. He seemed grateful. You had no business. Actually, she may have helped, her mother interrupted, which was unusual enough that everyone stopped. Mrs. Hartford mentioned that Blackthorn's quite wealthy. Army pension, inheritance, investments. He's not titled, but he's respectable and available. Oh no. Elara saw exactly where this was going and hated every second of it. He's too old for Celeste, her mother continued, thinking out loud. But for Elara, she looked at her daughter with an expression Elara had never seen before. Assessment, calculation, interest. It might be suitable. I'm not, Elara started. You're 23. We need to be practical. Her mother's voice had that brisk, business-like tone she used when managing the household accounts. If Blackthorn's interested, we should encourage it. You're certainly not getting younger, and opportunities like this don't come along often. Her father grunted. Blackthorn's land poor, the estate's a wreck. But he has money to rebuild it, and the family name is old, even if he isn't titled. Her mother was warming to the idea now, Elara could tell. It would be a reasonable match, better than we could have hoped for. Could you not discuss me like I'm livestock? Elara set down her fork carefully. I went riding, that's all. Don't be naive. A man doesn't invite a woman riding unless he's considering her. Her mother smiled, and it was almost kind. Almost. This could be good for you, Elara. You should make an effort, smile more. Perhaps do something with your hair. My hair is fine. It's adequate. which isn't the same thing. Her mother turned to her father. We should invite him to dinner again, something more formal. Give them a chance to get to know each other properly. I barely know him, Elara said, hearing desperation creep into her voice. Then you'll get to know him. That's the point. The conversation moved on, her parents debating invitation lists and menu options like Elara wasn't even there, like her opinion didn't matter, like this was just another negotiation, another property to be transferred from one owner to another. She excused herself as soon as she could and fled to the library. But even there, surrounded by books and silence, she couldn't escape the tight feeling in her chest. They'd finally noticed her, and it was somehow worse than being invisible. Because they didn't see her, they saw a problem they might finally solve, a burden they could transfer to someone else. And Blackthorn, she didn't even know how to think about that. Did he actually like her, or was he just being kind to a lonely woman? Had yesterday meant anything, or was she reading intentions into simple courtesy? She pulled down a book without looking at the title and sat in her usual chair by the window. But the words swam on the page, refusing to make sense. A knock on the library door made her jump. Come in. It was Blackthorn. Of course it was. Your father let me in, he said, looking uncomfortable. Said I should find you. Something about reviewing documents? Right, yes. Elara stood too quickly, nearly dropped her book. The water rights. I said I'd... Are you all right? Fine. Why? You look like you've seen a ghost. Just my future. Same thing. She moved to the shelves, needing something to do with her hands. The ledgers are over here. My grandfather was meticulous about recording everything, so if there were any trades or agreements, they'll be documented. She pulled down 3 heavy volumes, brought them to the reading table. Blackthorn followed, but he didn't sit. What happened? He asked quietly. Nothing. Elara, my parents have decided you're a suitable match. The words came out flat, angry. Congratulations. You've been upgraded from stranger to potential son-in-law based on one writing excursion. My mother's already planning dinner parties. He went very still. I see. Do you? Because I'm not sure I do. She opened one of the ledgers, stared at the cramped handwriting without reading it. Yesterday I was invisible. Today I'm a commodity, and the worst part is they think they're being kind, think they're helping. What do you want? The question caught her off guard. What? You, Elara, what do you want? No one had ever asked her that, not once in 23 years. I don't know, she admitted. I've spent so long trying not to want anything that I don't know how to answer that. Blackthorn pulled out a chair, sat down. Start small. Do you want me to leave? Right now. I can make excuses, avoid your family, kill this before it starts. Just say the word. No. The answer came too quickly, too certainly. She felt her face heat. All right. He opened one of the ledgers. Then let's look at these documents, figure out what I'm actually buying, and we can deal with your parents' expectations later. That's your solution? Ignore it? For now, yes. He found a page, frowned at the notation. I've learned that most problems either resolve themselves or get worse. Either way, worrying doesn't help. That's terrible advice. Probably, but it's kept me alive this long. Despite everything, Elara almost smiled. She sat down across from him and pulled over another ledger. They worked in silence for a while, tracking the convoluted history of water rights transfers between properties. It was detailed work, requiring concentration, and slowly Elara felt herself settle. This was good. This was safe. 2 people working on a problem together, nothing more, except it was more, and she knew it. Here, Blackthorn pointed to an entry. 1803. Your grandfather traded water access for timber rights with the Ashford estate, but there's no notation of it being traded back. Look 3 pages later, October. There's a reversal. Ah, right. He made a note. Your grandfather liked complications, didn't he? He liked being owed favors, kept people obligated to him. Smart man. Cruel man. My father learned from him. Blackthorn glanced up at that, but didn't press. They kept working. An hour passed. Then 2. The light through the window shifted from morning to afternoon. At some point, a servant brought tea and sandwiches, setting them down without comment. Elara barely noticed. She was explaining a particularly obscure clause when she realized Blackthorn wasn't looking at the ledger anymore. He was looking at her. "What?" she asked, suddenly self-conscious. "You light up when you talk about this. The law, the history, your whole face changes. That's ridiculous. It's true. You should see yourself." He leaned back in his chair. "When's the last time someone let you be smart without apologizing for it?" The question hit harder than it should have. "I don't know," she said quietly. "That's a crime. That's reality. Then reality's broken." He said it like a fact, like something that could be measured and proven. "You're wasted here. You know that, right?" "I'm perfectly aware, thank you." "So why stay?" "Where would I go? Women like me don't have options. We don't get to choose." "You're choosing right now, choosing to stay." "That's not the same as having a real choice." "Isn't it?" Elara stood up, needing distance. "You don't understand. You're a man. You can go anywhere, do anything. Rebuild an estate, buy land, make decisions about your own life. I can't even leave this house without someone commenting on my reputation." "You're right, I don't understand." Blackthorn stood too. "But I understand being trapped. And I understand that sometimes you have to burn everything down to get free." "Easy to say when you have something to burn." "You think I didn't lose things?" "I walked away from a military career because I was tired of watching men die for politics. Left friends, rank, pension prospects. Started over with nothing but a ruined estate and a name people remember for all the wrong reasons." "Oh, what wrong reasons?" He smiled, but there was no humor in it. "My father drank himself to death and took half the estate's value with him. My mother died of shame a year later. Everyone knows it. Everyone remembers. Coming back here means facing that every single day." Elara hadn't known any of that, hadn't realized. "I'm sorry," she said. "Don't be. I'm telling you because you think you're the only one carrying weight. You're not. We're all damaged. The question is what you do with it. And what are you doing with it? Rebuilding. One brick, one field, one transaction at a time." He moved closer. "And maybe, if you wanted, you could help." Her heart stuttered. "Help how?" "However you want. Come survey properties with me. Review more documents. Tell me when my ideas are stupid." He paused. "Or don't. But stop acting like you're nothing when you're clearly not." Before she could respond, the library door burst open. Her mother stood in the doorway, face flushed with excitement. Behind her, Elara could see several other women, society wives, gossip brokers, the social architects who built and destroyed reputations over tea. "Oh!" Her mother's eyes went wide, taking in the scene. Elara and Blackthorn standing close, ledgers spread across the table, hours spent alone together. "I didn't realize you were still... That is, we didn't mean to interrupt." But the damage was done. Elara could see it in their faces, the speculation, the assessment, the rapid recalculation of her value on the marriage market. Lady Hartford stepped forward, all false sweetness. "Mr. Blackthorn, how lovely to see you. We heard you were visiting and simply had to call." "Ladies?" He recovered smoothly, but Elara saw the tension in his shoulders. "Miss Whitcomb was helping me with some property research." "Property research?" Lady Hartford's smile sharpened. "How studious." The other women tittered. Elara felt something crack inside her chest. This was it. This was how it would go. They'd twist this into something scandalous, spread it through the county, and her parents would have no choice but to push for an engagement to save her reputation. And Blackthorn would be trapped with a woman he'd only been trying to help. "Actually," Elara said, her voice cutting through the noise, "Mr. Blackthorn was just leaving. We've concluded our business." "Oh, but surely—" her mother started. "No. We're done." She looked at Blackthorn, tried to communicate everything she couldn't say. "Run. Get out. Don't let them trap you." "Thank you for your time, Mr. Blackthorn. I hope you found the information useful." He stared at her for a long moment. Then something hardened in his expression. "The information was invaluable, as was the company." He bowed, formal and proper. "Ladies, Mrs. Whitcomb, I'll see myself out." He left. Elara endured the next 20 minutes of pointed questions and thinly veiled accusations. Lady Hartford wanted to know how long they'd been researching together. Mrs. Norton wondered if her parents knew she was entertaining gentlemen alone. Her mother tried to deflect, to make it sound innocent, but the damage was done. By dinner time, the whole county would know that Elara Whitcomb had spent hours alone with Dorian Blackthorne in the library. By tomorrow, the speculation would begin. By next week, her parents would be planning a wedding. That night, alone in her room, Elara made a decision. She couldn't stop the gossip, couldn't control what people said or thought, but she could control what happened next. Tomorrow she'd find Blackthorne and tell him the truth, that he owed her nothing, that she didn't expect anything, that he should walk away before her family's desperation dragged him under. Tomorrow, she'd be brave enough to let him go. But tonight, just for tonight, she let herself imagine a different future, one where someone actually chose her, not because they had to, not because of scandal or obligation or family pressure, just because they wanted to. The fantasy was sweet enough to break her heart. The fantasy died with the sunrise. Elara woke to voices in the hallway, her mother's sharp whisper, her father's low rumble of anger. She lay still, listening, already knowing what was coming. Absolutely unacceptable. Lady Hartford's already told half the county. Then we move quickly, announce an understanding before the gossip gets worse. What if he refuses? He won't. Not if he wants to keep doing business here. Not if he values his reputation. Elara closed her eyes. There it was. The trap closing. She dressed mechanically, chose the plainest dress she owned, and went downstairs prepared for battle. But her parents weren't in the breakfast room. Neither were the servants, except for Mary, the kitchen maid, who looked at Elara with something like pity. Where is everyone? Gone to the Blackthorne estate, miss. Your father and mother both. Left an hour ago. Elara's stomach dropped. Why? Didn't say. But your mother was dressed for calling, and your father had that look. You know the one. She knew. The look that meant negotiations, deals, arrangements being made without her consent. How far is the Blackthorne estate? 5 miles north, miss. But you shouldn't. Elara was already moving. She took Maple from the stable without asking permission, didn't bother with a proper riding habit, just hiked up her skirts and rode like she'd watched the tenant farmer's boys ride, fast and reckless and not caring who saw. The Blackthorne estate came into view after 20 minutes of hard riding. Mary had been right to call it a ruin. The main house was massive but crumbling, windows broken, roof sagging. The grounds were overgrown, gardens gone wild. It looked like something from a ghost story. Her parents' carriage sat in the circular drive. Elara dismounted, tied Maple to a post, and walked toward the entrance. The front door was open, literally hanging off its hinges. She could hear voices inside echoing through what must have been the main hall. Quite reasonable, considering the circumstances. Her father's voice. Reasonable? You're trying to extort me. Blackthorne, angry. Extort is such an ugly word. I prefer to think of it as protecting both our interests. Elara stepped into the doorway. The hall was enormous and empty, stripped of everything valuable. Her parents stood near the center, looking absurdly formal in the gutted space. Blackthorne faced them, arms crossed, jaw tight. Elara, her mother's voice went sharp with displeasure. What are you doing here? I could ask you the same thing. We're having a private discussion with Mr. Blackthorne. Return home immediately. No. Her father's face darkened. This is not a request. And I'm not a child. Elara walked forward, boots echoing on the bare floor. What are you doing? Protecting your reputation, her mother said, which you've damaged quite thoroughly. By reading documents in a library? By spending hours alone with a man, unchaperoned, in a compromising situation. Her mother's voice took on that clipped, factual tone. Lady Hartford witnessed it. Mrs. Norton, Mrs. Ashford, Lady Pemberton, they all saw. By now the entire county knows. Knows what? That I helped someone with research? Knows that you were alone with him. Her father stepped forward. Your mother and I have been more than patient with your eccentricities. But this crosses a line. There will be consequences unless steps are taken. What steps? An engagement, her mother said simply. Announced immediately. Marriage within the month. It's the only way to salvage this. Elara looked at Blackthorne. His face was stone, giving nothing away. And what does he say about this? Mr. Blackthorne understands the situation, her father said. He's a gentleman. He knows his obligations. Does he? Elara turned to Blackthorne fully. Do you understand your obligations? I understand coercion when I see it. His voice was flat, cold. Your father's made his position clear. Either I agree to marry you, or he'll make sure every landowner in the county knows about our improper relationship. The sale falls through. My reputation becomes toxic. I lose everything before I've even started rebuilding. That's not, Elara started. That's exactly what he said. Blackthorne's eyes were hard. Very clear, very specific, very effective. Her father smiled. I'm simply being practical. You've compromised my daughter. The honorable thing would be letting people make their own choices. Elara's voice cracked like a whip. But you've never cared about honor, just control. Watch your tone. Or what? You'll disown me? Do it. I dare you. She felt something wild rising in her chest, years of silence breaking like a dam. I've been invisible in that house for 23 years. Being officially cut off would be a relief. Her mother gasped. Elara, you don't mean that. I absolutely mean it. Every word. She turned to Blackthorne. You don't have to do this. Whatever they're threatening, whatever they've said, walk away. I'll survive. I always have. Will you? Blackthorne asked quietly. Yes. They'll destroy you, spread rumors you were my mistress, that I ruined you and discarded you. You'll never marry, never have any kind of life. I don't have a life now. This wouldn't be much different. Elara. Her mother's voice actually wobbled. Please be reasonable. This is a good match, better than you could hope for. Mr. Blackthorne is respectable, wealthy enough, and willing to overlook your shortcomings. How generous, Elara said bitterly. It is generous. Her father moved closer, and there was something almost desperate in his face. You think I don't know what people say, what they think? You're strange, difficult, unmarriageable. This is your chance. Perhaps your only chance. Don't throw it away out of pride. The words hurt more than they should have, because part of her, the weak, desperate part, knew he was right. This was her chance. Maybe her only chance to escape that house, to have something resembling a future, and she'd be sacrificing Blackthorne to get it. No, she said. I won't do it. I won't trap him like this. You don't have a choice. She does, actually. Everyone turned to look at Blackthorne. She has a choice, he repeated. And so do I. He looked at Elara, and something in his expression shifted. I could marry you out of obligation. Let your father win. Spend the rest of our lives resenting each other for how this started. Yes, Elara said, throat tight. You could. Or I could marry you because I want to. The world stopped. What? Her voice came out as a whisper. You heard me. Blackthorne crossed the space between them in 3 strides. I've spent 2 days with you. 2 days. And you're the most interesting person I've met in a decade. You're sharp, honest, ruthless when you need to be. You see through everyone's nonsense, including your own. You're wasted in that house with people who don't value you. That's not... You don't... Elara couldn't form a complete sentence. You can't possibly... Want to marry you? Watch me. He glanced at her parents. But not like this. Not with them holding a knife to both our throats. Her father's face went purple. Now see here. No, you see here. Blackthorne's voice dropped, became something dangerous. I've negotiated with warlords and corrupt officials. I've survived battles and famines and betrayals that would break most men. You think threats scare me? You think I care what gossiping aristocrats say about my reputation? You should care. Without local support, I'll manage. I always have. He turned back to Elara. But I won't start a marriage on coercion. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave. Take your carriage, your threats, your manipulation, and get off my property. You can't. I can. And I am. This is my land. You're trespassing. We came to discuss a deal that no longer interests me. The sale is off. Keep your parcel. I'll find water access somewhere else. Elara's mother made a strangled sound. But the money. You need the money. Not enough to be blackmailed for it. Blackthorne walked to the door, held it open. Leave.
Now. Her father drew himself up, trying to salvage dignity from disaster. This is a mistake, Blackthorn. You'll regret. Probably. I regret a lot of things, but I've learned to live with it. They left. Had no choice, really. Her mother threw Elara one last desperate look, but Elara couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't process what had just happened. The sound of the carriage faded. Blackthorn closed the door. They stood in the ruined hall, silence pressing down like a physical weight. You didn't have to do that, Elara finally said. I know. They'll make good on their threats, the rumors, the sabotage. I know. You'll lose everything. Maybe. He walked back toward her, and in the morning light streaming through the broken windows, she could see every scar, every line on his face. Or maybe I'll gain something worth more. You don't know me. Not really. 2 days. That's nothing. You can't make this kind of decision based on 2 days. Why not? People make worse decisions with more time. He stopped a few feet away. I know enough. I know you're honest when everyone else is performing. I know you value substance over appearance. I know you've survived in a family that dismissed you for years and you're still standing. That's more than enough. You're insane. Probably. Military service does that. He smiled, just a little. Look, I'm not promising a fairy tale. This place is a disaster. Rebuilding it will take years, maybe decades.
It'll be hard work, constant struggle, no guarantees of success. If you're looking for comfort or status or an easy life, I can't offer that. What can you offer? Honesty, partnership, respect, a chance to actually matter instead of being invisible. He paused. And maybe, eventually, something more, if we're lucky. Elara's hands were shaking. This is crazy. Yes. We'll probably fail. Very likely. Everyone will think we're fools. They already do. May as well prove them right. She laughed, a broken, desperate sound. You're serious. You're actually serious. I don't joke about marriage. Too permanent. But my parents, the gossip, will happen whether we marry or not. At least this way we get something out of it. He took a step closer. I'm not doing this out of obligation, Elara. I'm doing it because I think we could build something real here. Something that matters. But only if you want to. Only if you choose it. Choose, she echoed. When have I ever gotten to choose? Right now, this moment. His eyes were steady on hers. You can walk out that door, go back to your parents' house. Let them arrange a different match, someone more suitable. I won't stop you, won't judge you. I understand self-preservation. Or you stay. Take a chance on this disaster of an estate and the equally disastrous man who owns it. Help me rebuild. Make something from nothing. See what happens. It was the worst offer anyone had ever made her. It was also the only honest one. I need time, she said, to think. Take all the time you need. I'll be here. Probably wrestling with the roof or arguing with contractors, but here. She turned to leave, made it 3 steps before she heard him speak again. Elara. Yes? For what it's worth, I think you're extraordinary, and I think anyone who doesn't see that is blind. She didn't trust herself to respond, just nodded and walked out. The ride home was a blur. Her mind kept circling, unable to settle. Marriage to Blackthorn. Partnership. Escape from her parents' house. But also poverty, hard work, social ostracism. Everything she'd been taught to avoid. Everything she'd never been brave enough to choose. The house was quiet when she arrived. Her parents were in her father's study, voices raised. Elara walked past without stopping, went straight to her room. She had 3 days before the gossip became unmanageable. 3 days to decide what kind of life she wanted. 3 days to choose between safety and possibility. She didn't sleep that night either. The next morning, Lady Hartford came calling. Elara knew it was bad when the woman arrived before noon. Morning visits were for friends, afternoon for social warfare. This was reconnaissance disguised as concern. My dear Elara, Lady Hartford settled into the parlor like a queen on a throne. I felt I simply must speak with you. The things people are saying, I can imagine. Can you?
The older woman's eyes were sharp. They're saying you threw yourself at Mr. Blackthorne, that you engineered compromising situations to trap him into marriage, that your parents caught you in flagrante delicto. That's absurd. Is it? You were alone with him for hours, unchaperoned, in a library. She said library like it was a brothel. What else are people to think? That we were reviewing documents. Which is the truth? Truth is what people believe, dear, not what actually happened. Lady Hartford leaned forward. I'm trying to help you. If you just admit you made a mistake, show some contrition, perhaps we could contain this. I didn't make a mistake. You spent hours alone with a man, doing research. Nothing improper happened. But it looks improper. Don't you understand? Appearance is everything in our world. Facts are irrelevant. Then your world is broken. Lady Hartford's face went cold. You ungrateful little fool. I'm offering you a way out, a chance to salvage your reputation, and you're too stubborn to take it. I don't want your help. I don't want your way out. I want... Elara stopped herself. What? What do you want? Everything. Nothing. A life that's actually mine. I want people to stop pretending they care about my welfare when they're really just protecting their own sense of order. Lady Hartford stood, drawing herself up to her full height. Very well, if that's how you feel, I wash my hands of you. When this scandal destroys you, and it will, don't come crying to me. I won't. The woman left in a storm of rustling skirts and offended dignity. Elara's mother appeared in the doorway moments later, face pale. What have you done? Told the truth. The truth? Her mother's voice rose. The truth is social death, Elara. Lady Hartford controls half the invitations in this county. Without her approval, I'll survive. Will you how? Her mother crossed the room, grabbed Elara's shoulders. You have no money of your own, no skills, no prospects. If we cut you off, and we will, if you keep this up, where will you go? What will you do? I'll figure it out. You'll starve in a gutter somewhere. That's what you'll do. There were tears in her mother's eyes now, real ones. I know you think I'm heartless, that I don't care, but I'm trying to protect you. This world, our world, it's brutal to women without protection, without status. I've seen it destroy people. Then maybe I don't want to be part of this world. Her mother's hands dropped. You don't mean that. I do. I've spent my entire life being the wrong shape for the hole you wanted me to fit into. I'm done trying. Elara, I'm going to marry Blackthorne, not because you want me to, not because of scandal or obligation, because I choose to. Her mother stepped back like she'd been slapped. You can't be serious. I am. He has nothing. No title, no fortune, a ruined estate. He has respect for me. That's more than anyone in this house has ever offered. Respect doesn't put food on the table. Neither does being invisible. Her mother stood there, mouth opening and closing, unable to find words. Finally, she turned and left without another word. Elara's hands were still shaking. She'd done it, burned it all down. No going back now. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, she felt light. That afternoon, she rode back to the Blackthorne estate. He was on the roof when she arrived, hammering shingles alongside 3 workers who looked surprised to see their employer doing manual labor. He climbed down when he spotted her, wiping sweat from his forehead. That was fast, he said. I made a decision. And? I'm saying yes. To the partnership, the marriage, all of it. His face went carefully neutral. You're sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. As a smile broke across his face. Genuine, unguarded. Good. That's good. I need you to understand something first. Elara dismounted, faced him squarely. I don't love you. I barely know you. This isn't a romance. It's a business arrangement with the possibility of something more. Understood. I'll work, really work. I'm not going to be some decorative wife who manages the household while you handle everything important. I want to be involved in all of it. I was counting on it. And if this doesn't work, if we realize we've made a terrible mistake, then we'll deal with it, together. He held out his hand. Partners? She took it. Partners. They shook on it like men making a contract. should have felt cold, transactional. Instead, it felt like the first honest thing she'd ever done. The wedding was arranged for the following week. Small, quiet, almost furtive. Her parents attended but didn't speak. Celeste came, looking confused and worried. A handful of locals showed up out of curiosity. Lady Hartford made sure to spread word of her absence. Elara wore a simple dress, no veil. Blackthorn wore his military uniform, the one with the medals he never talked about. The ceremony took 10 minutes. Afterward, they rode to the Blackthorn estate together. "Welcome home," he said, helping her down from the carriage. Elara looked at the ruined house, the overgrown grounds, the massive amount of work ahead of them. "It's perfect," she said, and meant it. The first week was brutal. They had one habitable room, the old morning parlor that Blackthorn had been using as living quarters. Everything else was unsafe or uninhabitable. They ate simple food cooked over a fireplace. They worked from dawn until dusk, cataloging damage, making plans, arguing about priorities. It was exhausting. It was real. It was the happiest Elara had been in her entire life. "The north wing needs to come down completely," Blackthorn said one evening, studying architectural plans by candlelight. "It's not structurally sound. Trying to save it would cost more than rebuilding. The tenants won't like that. It's historic." "The tenants are gone. Have been for a decade." "Then we need to bring them back." Elara pulled over another document. "Look, if we can get the mill running, we can offer employment. Processing grain means we need farmers. Farmers need land. We have land. Land that hasn't been worked in years. So we make it attractive, lower rents initially, invest in improvements, build a community." He looked at her. "That'll take every penny we have, and then some. I know. We could fail. We could. But you think it's worth trying. I think doing nothing guarantees failure. At least this way we have a chance." He smiled. "See? This is why I married you. For my agricultural opinions? For your refusal to accept defeat before we've even started." They worked late into the night, making plans, sketching possibilities, building something from nothing. It felt like hope. The attack came 2 weeks later. Elara was in the village, meeting with the few remaining tenant families, when she heard the news. Mrs. Crawford, the blacksmith's wife, pulled her aside with a worried expression. "Mrs. Blackthorn, I thought you should know, there's talk, bad talk." "What kind of talk?" "About your husband, his time in the military. They're saying—" The woman hesitated. "They're saying he committed atrocities overseas, that he's violent, dangerous, that he murdered civilians." Elara's blood went cold. "Who's saying this?" "Everyone. Lady Hartford was in the shop yesterday, going on about how she'd heard from reliable sources. Mrs. Norton confirmed it, said her cousin served in the same regiment and witnessed it personally." "That's impossible. Who's the cousin?" "She didn't say, just that it was all going to come out soon, that people needed to know what kind of man you'd married." Elara rode home like the devil was chasing her. Blackthorn was in the courtyard, directing workers on the foundation repairs. He looked up when she arrived, and his expression changed immediately. "What happened?" "We need to talk. Privately." They went inside. Elara paced while he waited, patient and still. "Someone's spreading rumors about you," she finally said, "about your military service. They're saying you killed civilians, committed war crimes." His face went completely blank. "Dorian, it's not true," he said quietly. I would never. I know that. Do you?" He looked at her, and there was something raw in his eyes. "You barely know me, Elara. For all you know, they're right." "They're not." "How can you be sure?" "Because I've seen you. How you treat people. How you work alongside laborers instead of ordering them around. How you talk about rebuilding this place. It's about community, not ego." She stopped pacing. Someone who'd commit atrocities wouldn't care about those things. "Unless I'm hiding it, unless I'm very good at pretending." "Are you?" "No." He sat down heavily. "I'm not. And I didn't do what they're accusing me of. But I did see things, terrible things, and I couldn't stop them all, couldn't save everyone. That's not the same as causing them, isn't it?
When you follow orders you know are wrong? When you choose survival over morality? What orders? He was quiet for a long moment. There was a village, French sympathizers supposedly. My commanding officer wanted to make an example. I refused. Got court-martialed for insubordination. Spent 3 months in a military prison before they quietly discharged me. That's the truth? Yes. Then we fight back. We tell people what really happened.
You think they'll believe me? A disgraced soldier against the word of society matrons? I think... A knock on the door interrupted her. One of the workers stood there, face grim. Sir, you need to come outside. Now. They followed him to the courtyard. A crowd had gathered, 30, maybe 40 people. Villagers, tenant farmers, locals. They held makeshift weapons. Torches, despite the daylight. Their faces were twisted with fear and anger. At the front stood a man Elara recognized, Gerald Norton, Mrs. Norton's husband, a magistrate with influence and connections. Dorian Blackthorne, he called out, you're under arrest for war crimes committed during your military service. Surrender yourself peacefully, or we'll take you by force. Elara's world tilted. This wasn't just gossip. This was organized, official. Someone had planned this, built a case, weaponized the legal system against them. Blackthorne stepped forward, and she saw him shift, saw the soldier emerge. Calm, controlled, dangerous. On whose authority? He asked. Mine, as magistrate. In a sworn testimony from Lieutenant James Crawford, who served under your command and witnessed your crimes firsthand. Crawford's dead. Died in Spain 2 years ago. Norton smiled. Do you have proof of that? Do you have proof he's alive? I have his sworn statement, signed and witnessed. By whom? Myself and Lady Hartford. There it was. The trap, fully sprung. They'd fabricated evidence, forged a dead man's testimony, and built a legal case that would destroy him completely. Elara stepped forward, putting herself between Blackthorne and the crowd. This is insane. You're accusing him based on a document from a dead man? A document legally sworn and witnessed, Norton corrected. The law is clear. The law is being manipulated, and you know it. Mrs. Blackthorne, please step aside. This doesn't concern you. It absolutely concerns me. You're trying to arrest my husband on false charges. Are they false? Norton's voice carried across the crowd. Can you prove he didn't commit these acts? Can you guarantee the safety of this community with a murderer in its midst? The crowd murmured, shifted, fear rippling through them. Elara. Blackthorne's voice was quiet. Step back. No. This isn't your fight. Like hell it isn't. She turned to face the crowd, raised her voice. You're being lied to, all of you. This isn't about justice. It's about destroying a man who refused to play their games, who chose to rebuild instead of beg for acceptance. We have evidence, Norton started. You have forgery. A convenient testimony from a dead man who can't defend himself or verify what he supposedly said. Elara's voice rang clear. You want to arrest someone? Arrest the people who fabricated this. Arrest Lady Hartford for perjury. Arrest everyone who participated in this fraud. That's slander. That's truth. And you're terrified of it. The crowd wavered. Some faces showed doubt now. Uncertainty. But not enough. Norton raised his hand. Take him. Men moved forward. Blackthorne didn't resist, just stood there, steady and still, as they grabbed his arms. And Elara made the choice that would change everything. Wait, she called out. If you arrest him, you arrest me too. Everyone stopped. What? Norton looked genuinely confused. I'm his wife. Under law, his crimes are my crimes. His guilt is my guilt. You can't take one without the other. That's not how this works. Isn't it? You're so concerned with law and justice. Let's follow it precisely. Either we both go, or neither of us does. Blackthorne grabbed her arm. Elara, no. Yes. She met his eyes, saw the fear there. Not for himself. For her. Partners, remember? All of it. Including this. They'll destroy you. They were always going to destroy me. At least this way, I get to choose how. She turned back to Norton. So what's it going to be? Arrest both of us and make this farce even more obvious? or admit you have no real case and back down. Norton's face had gone purple. The crowd was muttering now, clearly uncomfortable. Arresting a woman on her husband's supposed crimes wasn't the same as arresting a dangerous man. It made the whole thing look exactly like what it was, persecution disguised as justice. "This isn't over," Norton finally said. "We'll be back, with proper warrants, real authority, and when we come, we'll be here," Elara said. "Both of us, waiting." The crowd dispersed slowly, reluctantly. Norton left with dark promises and darker threats. When they were finally alone, Blackthorn turned to her. "That was the stupidest, bravest thing I've ever seen." "I know." "They'll come back. You heard him. Next time with real charges, real warrants. Then we fight." "Elara, you don't understand what you've just done. You've tied yourself to me completely. If I go down, we go down together. I meant what I said. Partners." He stared at her for a long moment, then pulled her into his arms, held her so tightly she could barely breathe. "Thank you," he whispered against her hair, "for standing with me, for choosing this, for being monumentally stupid, extraordinary." They stood there in the ruins of their courtyard, surrounded by half-finished repairs and unfinished dreams, holding each other against the storm they both knew was coming. And for the first time, Elara understood what it meant to truly choose someone. Not because they were perfect, not because it was safe, but because together they were stronger than they'd ever been apart. The war had begun. And she was done running. The war had begun, and Elara refused to fight it on their terms. That night, she sat at the makeshift desk in their one habitable room, surrounded by documents, ledgers, and every piece of paper she could find related to Blackthorn's military service. Dorian paced behind her, too restless to sit. "There has to be something," she muttered, flipping through discharge papers. "Some proof that Crawford died. Service records, burial documentation, something. Military records are sealed, confidential. Then we unseal them. It's not that simple." "Nothing about this is simple." She looked up at him. "But sitting here waiting for them to destroy us isn't an option either. We need proof, real proof, not forged testimonies from dead men. Even if we prove Crawford's dead, they'll just find another witness, another lie." Dorian stopped pacing, braced his hands on the table. "This isn't about truth, Elara. It's about power. They want us gone, and they'll keep pushing until we are. Then we push back harder." "How?" She didn't have an answer yet, but she was going to find one. The next morning, she rode to the village alone. Dorian had argued against it. Too dangerous, too risky, but Elara knew something he didn't. The people who'd shown up yesterday weren't all true believers. Some had been scared, some confused. Some had come because Norton told them to, not because they wanted to. Those were the ones she needed to reach. Mrs. Crawford was hanging laundry when Elara found her. The woman's face went tight when she saw who was approaching. "Mrs. Blackthorn, I don't think... I need 5 minutes, please. My husband said we shouldn't talk to you, your husband, the blacksmith, or the magistrate's husband." Elara dismounted, kept her voice gentle. "Because I'm guessing you have opinions of your own." Mrs. Crawford's hand stilled on the wet sheet. "What do you want?" "The truth. You told me yesterday that Mrs. Norton's cousin witnessed atrocities, but you looked uncomfortable saying it. Why?" "I shouldn't. Please, my husband's life depends on this." The older woman sighed, glanced around to make sure they were alone. "Because it didn't feel right. The way she told it, so rehearsed, like she'd practiced. And when I asked which Crawford it was, we've got 3 in the extended family who served, she got flustered, changed the subject." "So you don't believe it?" "I don't know what I believe. But I know rush justice usually isn't justice at all." Mrs. Crawford met her eyes. "My son's in the army, has been for 3 years. If someone accused him of crimes based on nothing but gossip and convenient papers, I'd want people to ask questions." "Thank you," Elara said quietly. "That's all I needed to hear." She visited 6 more families that morning, got similar responses. Doubt, uncertainty. Nobody wanted to condemn a man without real proof, but nobody wanted to stand against the magistrate either. Fear was a powerful weapon, but doubt was stronger. By afternoon, she had a list of names.
People who'd come to the confrontation reluctantly. People who might listen to reason if given the chance. It wasn't much, but it was a start. When she returned home, she found Dorian in the courtyard with a visitor, her sister. Celeste stood next to her carriage, looking out of place in her fine dress and jewelry. She turned when Elara approached, and her face was pale. "Elara, thank heavens. I've been waiting an hour. What are you doing here?" "I had to come, to warn you." Celeste glanced at Dorian, then back. "Mother told me everything. The charges, the arrest attempt, all of it. She's worried. We both are." "Worried enough to help?" Celeste flinched. "That's not fair, isn't it? Where were you yesterday when they came with torches? Where was our family when we needed support? We can't publicly defy a magistrate's order." "Of course not. That might damage your reputation." Elara heard the bitterness in her own voice and didn't care. "So why are you here, Celeste?" Her sister's eyes filled with tears. "Because you're my sister. Because I love you, even if I've been terrible at showing it. And because I might have information that could help." That got Elara's attention. "What information?" "Lady Hartford. I was at her house last week for tea, and I overheard her talking to Mrs. Norton. They were discussing the Blackthorn situation and how it needed to be handled before he gained too much influence in the area." Celeste twisted her hands. They were laughing about the Crawford testimony, about how easy it had been to forge. Dorian stepped forward. "They admitted it was forged?" "Not directly. But the implication was clear. Lady Hartford said something about convenient deaths and convenient documents, and they both laughed." Celeste looked miserable. "I should have said something then. Should have told you immediately. But I was scared." "Of what?" Elara asked. "Of being cut off. Of losing my place in society. Of—" She stopped, wiped her eyes. "Of being like you. And I'm so ashamed of that now." The admission hung in the air. Elara wanted to be angry, wanted to rage at her sister's weakness, her complicity. But she saw herself in Celeste's fear, saw the woman she might have become if circumstances had been different. "Can you testify to what you heard?" Dorian asked. I don't know. My husband would lose business from half the county if you did," Elara finished. "I understand. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "Don't be sorry. Be useful." Elara's mind was racing. "You still attend their gatherings, their parties. You hear things." "Yes, but—" "Then keep listening. Keep your ears open. If they're planning something else, if you hear anything that could help us, you tell me. Immediately." Celeste nodded, looking relieved to have a task that didn't require public defiance. "I can do that. And Celeste?" Elara softened her voice. "Thank you. For coming. For trying." Her sister hugged her, quick and fierce, then fled to her carriage before she could change her mind. Dorian waited until the carriage disappeared before speaking. "That was generous of you." "No, it was strategic. We need allies, even compromised ones." "You're learning to play their game." "I'm learning to win." She turned to him. "We need to go on the offensive. Stop reacting. Start acting." "What did you have in mind?" "A gathering. Here. We invite everyone, the villagers, the tenants, the people who came yesterday with torches. We show them this place, what we're trying to build. We let them see you as a person, not a monster." "They won't come." "Some will. The ones with doubts, the ones who want to believe there's another side to this story." She grabbed his hand. "We can't win by hiding. We have to be visible, vulnerable, real." "That's incredibly risky." "I know. But doing nothing guarantees we lose. This way, we at least have a chance." He studied her face for a long moment. "You've changed. Since we married. You're more—" "Reckless?" "Certain." He squeezed her hand. "I like it." "Good, because I'm about to get a lot more certain." They spent the next 3 days preparing. Dorian focused on making the courtyard presentable, clearing debris, setting up tables, creating a space that looked less like a ruin and more like a work in progress. Elara rode through the village and surrounding areas, personally inviting people, not with formal cards or proper protocol, but with direct, honest conversations. "I know what you've heard," she told them. "I know you're scared. Come see for yourself whether you should be. Most refused. Some slammed doors in her face, but a few, a surprising few, agreed to come. Mrs. Crawford and her husband. 3 tenant families who'd worked the land before it fell into disrepair. A handful of younger villagers who were curious or brave or bored enough to take the risk. 17 people total. It would have to be enough. The gathering was set for Saturday afternoon. Elara woke that morning with her stomach in knots, convinced this was a terrible idea. What if no one came? What if they came but turned hostile? What if this backfired spectacularly and made everything worse? Second thoughts? Dorian asked, watching her pace. Third and fourth thoughts. Maybe fifth. We can cancel. No, we're doing this. She forced herself to stop moving. I'm just terrified. Good. Means you're taking it seriously. He crossed to her, pulled her close. We'll handle whatever happens. Together. She leaned into him, drawing strength from his certainty. Over the past weeks, they'd fallen into a rhythm, working side by side during the day, sitting together in the evenings, planning and arguing and occasionally laughing. It wasn't romance, not exactly, but it was partnership, trust, something real being built brick by brick, just like the estate. People started arriving around 2. Mrs. Crawford came first, her blacksmith husband looking uncomfortable but present. Then the tenant families, eyes wide at the state of the property. More villagers trickled in, clustering together like they were entering enemy territory. Elara greeted each one personally, thanked them for coming. Dorian stood slightly back, letting her take the lead. Smart. She was less threatening, more relatable. When everyone had arrived, 19 people, 2 more than expected, Elara called for attention. Thank you for coming, she said, pitching her voice to Carrie. I know it took courage. I know you've heard terrible things about my husband and probably worse things about me for defending him, so I'm not going to waste your time pretending this is a social call. That got a few nervous laughs. You deserve the truth, real truth, not the version being spread by people with their own agendas. So I'm going to tell you exactly what happened, and then you can decide for yourselves what you believe. She laid it out methodically. Dorian's military service, the incident that led to his discharge, the forged testimony from a dead soldier, the convenient timing of the accusations right when they were trying to rebuild the estate and bring back employment. James Crawford died 2 years ago in Spain, she said. I don't have proof of that yet, but we're working on getting it. What I do have is my sister's testimony that she overheard Lady Hartford and Mrs. Norton laughing about how easy the forgery was. Murmurs ran through the crowd. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why would they do this? What do they gain? Elara looked at each face. Control, power. This estate has been abandoned for years. Nobody cared about it. But now we're here trying to rebuild, trying to bring back tenants and employment, and actually make this land productive again, and that threatens the established order. How does it threaten them? One of the villagers called out. Because we're not playing by their rules, Dorian said, stepping forward. We're not begging for acceptance or approval. We're building something independent, self-sufficient, that scares people who derive their power from others' dependence. So you're saying this is all a conspiracy? Thomas Crawford, the blacksmith, sounded skeptical but not hostile. I'm saying it's politics disguised as justice, Dorian replied, and I'm asking you to look at the evidence, or lack of it, and make your own judgment. But if you didn't commit crimes, why were you discharged? Someone else asked. Dorian's jaw tightened. Elara could see him debating how much to reveal. Because I refused an order, he finally said. My commanding officer wanted to punish French civilians suspected of harboring sympathizers. I told him it was wrong, illegal. He court-martialed me for insubordination. I spent 3 months in military prison, then was quietly discharged when they realized the order itself was the problem, not my refusal to follow it. Silence. You went to prison for doing the right thing? Mrs. Crawford asked softly. I went to prison for defying authority. Whether it was right is a matter of perspective. No, Thomas Crawford said, surprising everyone. It's not. I served. I know what happens when officers give illegal orders. Most men follow them because it's easier. You didn't. That takes spine. More murmurs. These ones different, thoughtful. I can't prove I'm innocent, Dorian continued. I can only tell you what I know to be true, and hope you'll investigate for yourselves instead of accepting convenient lies. But I understand if you don't trust me. I'm a stranger. You have no reason to believe my word over people you've known for years." "That's where you're wrong," one of the tenant farmers spoke up. Old Samuel Harris, who'd worked the land under Dorian's father. "I knew your father, knew your mother, knew you as a boy. You were honest then, stubborn but honest. I'm inclined to believe you're still that way." "My son writes to me from his regiment," Mrs. Crawford added. "Tells me about the politics, the corruption, the officers who care more about glory than soldiers' lives. If half of what he says is true, then your story makes perfect sense." The crowd was shifting. Elara could feel it, the current changing, doubt turning to consideration. "We're not asking you to take our side against the magistrate," she said carefully. "We're just asking you to question the narrative you've been given, to demand real proof before condemning someone, to remember that gossip isn't evidence and fear isn't justice." "Well, what are you asking us to do?" a younger man called out. "Whatever your conscience allows. If that's just going home and thinking about what we've said, that's enough. If you want to help us find proof of Crawford's death or the forgery, we'd welcome it. If you want to tell others what you've heard today, spread a different story than the one being circulated. That helps too." "And if we do nothing?" the same man asked. "Then we'll still keep fighting," Dorian said simply, "because we have no choice. This is our home, our future. We're not giving up without a battle." The gathering broke up slowly after that. People clustered in small groups, talking in low voices. A few approached Elara and Dorian directly, offering quiet words of support, asking questions, sharing their own stories of being caught between truth and politics. Thomas Crawford pulled Dorian aside. "I've got a cousin who works in the military records office in London. Might be able to help with the Crawford documentation. No promises, but I'll write to him." "Thank you," Dorian said, clearly surprised. "Don't thank me yet. He might refuse, but he's honest, and he hates seeing the system abused." The blacksmith nodded to Elara. "Your wife's got steel in her. Didn't see that coming." "Neither did I," Dorian admitted. As the last visitors left, Elara sagged against the courtyard wall, exhausted. "Well?" she asked. "Disaster or success?" "Neither. Somewhere in between." Dorian sat beside her. "But you were remarkable. The way you spoke to them, made them feel heard. That was masterful." "I just told the truth." "No. You made them want to believe the truth. That's different. Harder." He took her hand. "We might actually survive this. Don't get confident. This was one small battle. The war's not over." "I know, but we won this round. That counts for something." They sat together in the fading afternoon light, surrounded by the ruins they were trying to rebuild, and for the first time since the accusations began, Elara felt something like hope. 3 days later, a letter arrived from Thomas Crawford's cousin in London. Elara's hand shook as she read it aloud to Dorian. "Lieutenant James Crawford, Infantry Regiment, died of fever in Madrid on October 12, 1823. Burial confirmed in military cemetery. Record sealed per standard protocol, but accessible via official request. We'll send certified copies under separate cover." Dorian closed his eyes. "That's it. That's the proof. It's proof Crawford's dead. We still need to prove the testimony was forged. The dates will do it. The testimony is dated March 1825, a year and a half after his death. Norton will claim clerical error or say Crawford wrote it before he died. Then we force him to produce the original document. Make him show his evidence in public." Dorian stood, started pacing again. "We take this to the county seat, file a formal complaint, demand an investigation." "That could take months. Better than waiting for them to arrest me on fabricated charges." Elara nodded slowly. "We need a solicitor, someone who can't be intimidated or bought." "I know someone, former military advocate, owes me a favor." Dorian glanced at her. "But going official means this becomes very public, very messy. Your family will be dragged into it. Your sister's testimony might become necessary." "Celeste made her choice, so did I." Elara stood, straightened her shoulders. "We do this properly, by the law. Force them to fight on even ground instead of in shadows." Over the next week, they built their case. Dorian's solicitor, a sharp-eyed man named Pearson who'd prosecuted corruption cases in the military, reviewed everything. The forged testimony, the death certificate, Celeste's reluctant but crucial account of what she'd overheard. "It's good," Pearson said. "Not airtight, but good enough to create doubt. And doubt is all we need to force Norton to back down." "What about Lady Hartford?" Elara asked. "She's the one driving this." "Harder to prove. The testimony is Norton's responsibility as magistrate. If we can show he acted on false evidence, his credibility is destroyed. Lady Hartford can claim she was merely passing along information, not fabricating it. So she gets away with it. Unless we can find someone willing to testify that she was directly involved in the forgery, which is unlikely, given her position." Elara thought about that, about the invisible networks of power that protected people like Lady Hartford while exposing people like Dorian to ruin. "What if we don't need a witness?" she said slowly. Both men looked at her. "What if we make her confess?" "That's—" Pearson stopped. "How?" "By making her angry enough to slip. By pushing her into defending herself publicly." Elara turned to Dorian. "She's been operating in shadows, controlling things behind the scenes. What if we force her into the light? She'll never agree to a public confrontation. She will if her reputation depends on it." An idea was forming, dangerous and reckless. "We don't just file complaints against Norton. We publish the whole story. Everything, the forged testimony, the dead witness, the conspiracy to destroy us. We make it impossible to ignore." "That's declaring war," Pearson warned. "We're already at war. This just makes it official." Dorian looked at her with something like awe. "You're serious?" "Completely. They wanted to destroy us quietly. Let's make it loud." They published the account in 3 newspapers, local, regional, and London. Paid for prominent placement, made sure every detail was documented, every accusation supported by evidence. The response was immediate and explosive. Within 2 days, the story had spread across the county. People took sides, some defending the magistrate and Lady Hartford, others demanding investigation. The county seat was forced to acknowledge the complaint. An official inquiry was announced, and Lady Hartford, cornered and furious, made her first mistake. She called a public gathering at the village hall, demanding the opportunity to defend her reputation against vicious slander and ungrateful accusations. Elara and Dorian attended. The hall was packed, standing room only, tension thick enough to cut. Lady Hartford stood at the front, flanked by Mrs. Norton and several other society matrons. She looked imperious, certain of her ground. "I have been accused," she began, voice ringing with indignation, "of fabricating evidence against Mr. Blackthorne, of conspiring to destroy his reputation. These accusations are not only false, they are libelous. I have never—" "You were overheard," Elara called from the back of the room. Every head turned. "Excuse me?" Lady Hartford's eyes narrowed. "You were overheard discussing the forgery, laughing about how easy it was." Elara pushed forward through the crowd. "Multiple witnesses can confirm it." "That's absurd. Who are these supposed witnesses?" "People who were in your drawing room when you discussed convenient deaths and convenient documents." Lady Hartford's face went pale, then red. "If you're referring to casual conversation taken wildly out of context, was it out of context because Lieutenant Crawford is confirmed dead, has been for 2 years, yet his testimony is dated 18 months after his death?" Elara reached the front, faced the older woman directly. "How do you explain that?" "I don't have to explain anything to you. No, you have to explain it to them." Elara gestured to the packed room. "To everyone who trusted you, who believed you when you spread these accusations. They deserve the truth. The truth is that your husband is a dangerous man. Prove it, with real evidence, not forged documents and dead witnesses." "How dare you? How dare I what? Ask for proof? Demand justice? Refuse to be destroyed quietly?" Elara's voice rose. "You've spent your life controlling people through fear and reputation, through whispers and social pressure. But this time you went too far. This time you broke the law." "I did no such thing." "Then explain the testimony. Explain how a dead man signed a document. Explain why you targeted my husband the moment he started rebuilding this estate." Elara stepped closer. "Or admit the truth, that you fabricated evidence because he threatened your control."
The room had gone completely silent. Lady Hartford's face was a mask of rage and fear. "You presumptuous little—" "Careful," Dorian said quietly, moving to stand beside Elara. "There are witnesses here. Whatever you say next will be remembered."
Lady Hartford looked around the room, seeing perhaps for the first time that the crowd wasn't entirely on her side. That doubt had taken root, that her word was no longer absolute. "This isn't over," she said, voice shaking with fury. "I will not be accused by some jumped-up nobody who thinks one fortunate marriage makes her someone."
"And there it is," Elara said softly. "The real reason you hate me. Not because of anything I've done, but because I didn't stay in my place. Because I chose my own path instead of accepting the one you'd decided for me. You chose poverty and ruin. I chose freedom, and you can't stand it." Lady Hartford opened her mouth, closed it. For the first time in probably her entire life, she had no response. No cutting remark, no social weapon to deploy. Magistrate Norton stepped forward, face grave. "Lady Hartford, I think it would be best if you refrained from further comment until the official inquiry is complete." "The inquiry is a farce. The inquiry is mandatory, given the evidence presented." Norton's voice was firm. "And if you continue to make public accusations without proof, you'll be held accountable." It was a retreat, a small one, but significant. Lady Hartford gathered herself, drew up to her full height. "This is not finished, not by a long measure." She swept out, her supporters scrambling to follow. But half the room stayed, and they were looking at Elara and Dorian with new eyes. Not with fear or suspicion, with respect, understanding, recognition. Mrs. Crawford approached first. That took courage. Real courage. "Or stupidity," Elara said, suddenly shaking. "Same thing sometimes." The older woman smiled. "But you did well. Made people think. That's more than most manage." Others came forward, offering words of support, sharing their own stories of being bullied or controlled by the established powers. It wasn't universal. Some left looking troubled, unconvinced, but the tide had shifted. When the hall finally emptied, Elara and Dorian walked home through the twilight. "That was reckless," he said. "I know. Dangerous. I know. Absolutely perfect." He pulled her close, kissed her forehead. "You were extraordinary. We were extraordinary. Together." "Together," he agreed. They reached the estate as darkness fell. The courtyard looked different now. Less like a ruin, more like a foundation. Work in progress. Promise waiting to be fulfilled. "What happens next?" Elara asked. "The inquiry, formal proceedings, probably weeks of legal battles." "But we'll win." "We might win. There's a difference." "No." She turned to face him. "We'll win. Because we have the truth, and they only have lies. And in the long run, truth is stronger." "When did you become such an optimist?" "When I realized I had something worth fighting for." He kissed her then, properly, deeply, and Elara understood that what had started as a practical arrangement had become something far more complicated. Partnership had evolved into trust, trust into affection, affection into something she wasn't quite ready to name, but it was there, growing, real. "Come on," she said, pulling back. "We have planning to do. If we're going to finish burying them, we need to be strategic." "You're terrifying when you're tactical." "Good. They should be terrified." They walked inside together, ready for whatever came next. The fight wasn't over, not even close. But for the first time, Elara believed they could actually win. And more than that, she believed they deserved to. And more than that, she believed they deserved to. The official inquiry began on a cold Monday morning in late November. The county courthouse was packed, every seat filled, people standing in the aisles, others pressed against the walls. This wasn't just about Dorian Blackthorne anymore. It had become something bigger. A test of whether truth could actually triumph over entrenched power. Elara sat in the front row, hands folded in her lap to keep them from shaking. Dorian sat beside her, his face carved from stone. Behind them, she could feel the weight of eyes, some supportive, some hostile, all waiting to see how this would end. The magistrate presiding was brought in from 2 counties over, a precaution against local bias. His name was Arthur Pembroke,
and he had a reputation for being aggressively fair, which meant he made everyone equally uncomfortable. Norton sat across the aisle with his solicitor, looking confident. Too confident, like he had something up his sleeve. Lady Hartford wasn't present. Claimed illness, though everyone knew it was strategy. Let Norton take the fall if things went badly, preserve her own position. Coward, Elara thought. Pembroke called the court to order with 3 sharp raps of his gavel. We're here to examine accusations of falsified evidence in the matter of charges against Mr. Dorian Blackthorne. Mr. Pearson, you may present your case. Their solicitor stood, and Elara held her breath. Pearson laid it out methodically. The forged testimony attributed to James Crawford. The death certificate proving Crawford had died 18 months before the document was supposedly signed. The circumstantial evidence of conspiracy. Celeste's testimony about the overheard conversation. Norton's solicitor countered with procedural objections, claims of hearsay, attempts to exclude evidence. But Pembroke shut him down repeatedly, demanding substance over technicality. The death certificate is clear, Pembroke said. Lieutenant Crawford died in 1823. This testimony is dated March 1825. How do you explain that discrepancy? Clerical error, Norton's solicitor said smoothly. The document was likely prepared earlier and misdated during transcription. Then produce the original, the one Crawford supposedly signed before his death. It was lost. These things happen. Conveniently. Pembroke's voice was dry. Very conveniently. The first day ended inconclusively. Elara left the courthouse frustrated, feeling like they were winning on facts but losing on procedure. Norton's team was good at deflection, at creating just enough doubt to avoid outright condemnation. We need something more, she told Dorian that night. Something they can't explain away. We have the death certificate, which they're claiming is a clerical error. We need proof of intent, proof they knowingly fabricated evidence. How do we get that? Elara thought for a long moment. We make them sloppy, angry, desperate. The next morning, she requested permission to address the court directly. Pembroke looked surprised, but intrigued. Mrs. Blackthorne, you're not on trial here. No, but my husband is. And I have relevant testimony about how these accusations originated. Norton's solicitor objected immediately. She's biased, emotionally compromised. She's also a witness to events surrounding these charges, Pearson countered. Her perspective is relevant. Pembroke considered, then nodded. I'll allow it, but keep it relevant, Mrs. Blackthorne. Elara stood, walked to the front of the courtroom. Every eye in the room followed her. She could feel her heart hammering, but forced her voice steady. I want to tell you how this started. Not the legal version, the human version. She described meeting Dorian, the library research, the gossip that followed, her parents' attempt to force a marriage. And then something interesting happened, she continued. The moment we announced our engagement, our voluntary engagement, not one coerced by scandal, the rumors started. Not about impropriety anymore, about violence, about war crimes. Suddenly my husband wasn't just unsuitable, he was dangerous. Objection, Norton's solicitor stood. This is speculation. Is it? Because the timing is remarkably convenient. My husband starts rebuilding his estate, starts offering employment, bringing back tenants, creating something independent of the established power structure. And immediately, within weeks, he's accused of crimes that would destroy his reputation and his ability to function in this community. She turned to face Norton directly. You want us to believe this is about justice, about protecting the community from a dangerous man, but it's not. It's about control, about destroying anyone who threatens the established order. That's a serious accusation, Pembroke said quietly. Yes, it is, and I can prove it. Elara pulled a folded paper from her pocket, something she'd been saving, waiting for the right moment. This is a letter from Lady Hartford to Magistrate Norton, written 2 days before the charges were filed. My sister found it in Lady Hartford's study and copied it. Norton's face went white. In it, Lady Hartford expresses concern about the Blackthorne estate becoming too influential and suggests that measures should be taken to ensure proper oversight. She specifically mentions that documentation could be arranged if necessary. Elara handed the letter to Pembroke. That's not justice, that's conspiracy. The courtroom erupted. Pembroke hammered for order while Norton's solicitor frantically objected and Pearson argued for the letter's admission. "Where did you get this?" Norton demanded on his feet. "I told you, my sister copied it." "That's theft." "That's evidence," Elara shot back, "and you're very concerned about it suddenly. Why? If it's meaningless, why do you care?" Norton's mouth opened and closed. His solicitor was whispering urgently in his ear. Pembroke examined the letter carefully. "This appears to be authentic. The handwriting matches known samples of Lady Hertford's correspondence, and the content is troubling." "It proves nothing," Norton's solicitor insisted. "Vague concerns about influence aren't evidence of forgery." "But they establish motive," Pembroke said. "And motive combined with the impossible timeline of the Crawford testimony creates a very compelling narrative." He looked at Norton. "I'm going to ask you directly, Magistrate Norton. Where did you obtain the Crawford testimony?" Norton shifted in his seat. "It was provided to me by Lady Hertford, who received it from Mrs. Norton, who claimed her cousin had sent it before his death." "And you verified this how?" I trusted the source." "You trusted a second-hand document, supposedly from a dead man, without any verification." Pembroke's voice was ice. "That's either criminally negligent or deliberately complicit." "I had no reason to doubt." "You had every reason to doubt. A reasonable magistrate would have investigated before bringing charges." Pembroke set down the letter. "I'm suspending these proceedings pending a full investigation into the origin of the Crawford testimony. If it's determined that you knowingly used falsified evidence, you'll face charges yourself." Norton stood abruptly. "This is outrageous. What's outrageous is a magistrate weaponizing his office to persecute citizens on behalf of social climbers." Pembroke's gavel came down hard. "Court is adjourned. Mr. Blackthorne, you're free to go. The charges are dismissed pending investigation. But given the evidence presented, I don't anticipate they'll be refiled." The courtroom exploded into chaos. Elara stood frozen, barely processing what had just happened. They'd won. Not completely, not cleanly, but they'd won. Dorian pulled her into his arms, and she could feel him shaking. "You did it," he whispered against her hair. "You actually did it." "We did it." People surged forward, some to congratulate them, others to argue, everyone wanting to be part of the moment. Pearson was beaming, shaking hands, already planning the next steps. Thomas Crawford clapped Dorian on the shoulder. Mrs. Crawford hugged Elara hard enough to squeeze the breath from her lungs. But through the crowd, Elara saw Norton. Saw him standing alone, abandoned by his supporters, facing the ruin of his career. And despite everything, she felt a flicker of something that might have been pity. He'd been a weapon. Lady Hertford had been the hand wielding it. They made it outside into cold air and gray skies. Rain was threatening, but Elara didn't care. She tilted her face up and laughed, a wild, relieved sound. "We should go home," Dorian said, "before the reporters descend." "Let them come. I'm not hiding anymore." But they rode home anyway, through countryside that looked different now. Not hostile, just land, beautiful and difficult and full of possibility. The estate appeared through the trees, and Elara saw it with new eyes. The main house was still half ruined, the grounds still wild. But the courtyard had been cleared. The foundation on the north wing was repaired. The old mill was halfway to operational. They'd built this. Together. In the gaps between fighting for their lives, they'd actually started creating something. "What happens now?" Dorian asked as they dismounted. "Now we finish what we started. Rebuild this place properly. Make it everything we said it could be." "Just like that?" "Why not? The hard part's over." He laughed. "You think that was the hard part? Wait until we're dealing with contractors and crop yields and tenant disputes." "I can handle contractors." "I know. That's what terrifies me." They walked inside, and Elara realized with a start that she was home, not her parents' house, not some temporary arrangement. This place, broken and difficult in theirs, was home. A week later, the official investigation concluded what everyone already knew. The Crawford testimony was a forgery. Norton had accepted it without proper verification because Lady Hertford had pressured him. She'd used her social influence to manipulate the legal system, and he'd let her because refusing her was politically dangerous. Norton was stripped of his magistracy, censured, humiliated. Lady Hartford faced no legal consequences. The evidence against her was circumstantial, and she had the money for excellent solicitors. But socially, she was destroyed. Half the county cut her. The other half whispered about her in corners. Her power, built on reputation and fear, evaporated overnight. Elara should have felt triumphant. Instead, she just felt tired. "Is it wrong that I don't feel better?" she asked Dorian one evening. They were in what would eventually be the library, currently just an empty room with new shelves being built. "We won. They're ruined, but I just feel empty." "That's because revenge doesn't actually satisfy," Dorian said. "I learned that in the military. You can win every battle and still feel hollow." "Then what does satisfy?" He gestured around the room. "This. Building something, creating instead of destroying." "That's surprisingly philosophical for a soldier." "I had a lot of time to think in prison. You develop philosophy or you go insane." Elara leaned against him, and they stood in the empty room planning where furniture would go, what books they'd collect, how this space would become something beautiful and useful. Her parents came to visit in December. Elara was in the courtyard directing workers on the garden reconstruction when their carriage appeared. She almost didn't recognize her father. He looked smaller somehow, older. Her mother climbed down carefully, looking around with barely concealed horror at the state of the grounds. "Elara." Her father's voice was stiff. "We need to talk." "All right." They went inside to the morning parlor, the only fully furnished room. Dorian appeared in the doorway, but Elara waved him away. This was her fight. Her parents sat on the sofa, looking uncomfortable. Elara took the chair across from them and waited. "We've come to apologize," her father finally said. Elara blinked. "What?" "For our part in this disaster. For trying to force the marriage. For not defending you when the accusation started." He looked genuinely pained. "We thought we were protecting you. We were wrong." "Very wrong," her mother added, "and we're sorry." Elara didn't know what to say. She'd imagined this moment, her parents acknowledging their mistakes, admitting they'd misjudged her. But now that it was happening, she felt oddly detached. "Why now?" she asked. "Why come here and say this now?" "Because we saw you in that courtroom, Les," her mother said. "Saw you stand up to Norton and Lady Hartford. Saw you fight for your husband and yourself with more courage than we've ever shown." Her eyes were wet. "And we realized we raised a daughter we never really knew. Never tried to know. You raised 2 daughters. You only cared about one." Her father flinched. That's fair. And inexcusable. Celeste was easier, fit the mold. You challenged everything. We didn't know how to handle you, so we didn't. You ignored me." "Yes, and we're ashamed of that." He leaned forward. "Elara, we can't undo the past. Can't change how we treated you, but we'd like to try to do better. If you'll let us." Elara looked at them. These people who'd shaped her childhood, dismissed her, finally noticed her only when she'd stopped needing their notice. Part of her wanted to refuse, to tell them it was too late, they'd missed their chance. But she was tired of fighting. "I don't need you to be different," she said quietly. "I don't need you to suddenly value me or understand me. I've built a life without that. But if you want to be part of it, the real part, not just the socially acceptable parts, then you're welcome. On my terms." "What terms?" her mother asked. "Honesty. No more games, no more manipulation. You treat Dorian with respect. You don't try to run my life or tell me how to live it. And you accept that I'm not Celeste. I never will be." Her parents exchanged a glance. "We can do that," her father said, "or we can try. Trying is enough." They stayed for tea, awkward and strained but real. Before they left, her mother hugged her, and Elara let herself lean into it just a little. "I'm proud of you," her mother whispered. "I should have said that years ago." "Yeah, you should have," but the words still mattered. After they left, Dorian found her standing in the courtyard, watching the sunset. "That looked difficult," he said. "It was, but necessary." She turned to him. "Do you think people can actually change? Or are we all just performing different versions of the same patterns?" "I think people can change if they want to badly enough. The question is whether they want to." He wrapped his arms around her from behind. Your parents might surprise you, or they might revert to type in 6 months. Also possible, but you gave them a chance. That's generous. I'm not feeling generous. I'm feeling practical. Holding grudges takes energy I'd rather spend elsewhere. Like on the mill renovation? Exactly. They stood together as darkness fell, and Elara thought about all the battles she'd fought to get here. The small ones. Daily dismissals, quiet contempt, casual cruelty. The large ones. Accusations, conspiracy, the full weight of social power wielded against her. She'd won. Not cleanly, not perfectly, but won nonetheless. By spring, the estate was unrecognizable. The main house was halfway renovated. The north wing was demolished and being rebuilt with modern conveniences. The mill was operational, processing grain from 3 tenant farms. More families were moving back, drawn by fair rents and the promise of stable work. Elara managed half of it, the contracts, the negotiations, the careful balancing of finances. Dorian handled the physical work, the construction, the farming operations. They argued constantly about priorities and methods, and whose turn it was to deal with the pig farmers' complaints. It was exhausting and frustrating, and exactly what Elara had never known she wanted. One afternoon in late May, she was in the newly finished library. 3 walls of shelves, her agricultural texts sharing space with Dorian's military histories, when Celeste came to visit. Her sister looked different, thinner, older, tired in a way that had nothing to do with physical exhaustion. I'm leaving him, Celeste said without preamble. What? My husband. I'm leaving him. She sat down heavily. I've been thinking about it for months. Since I testified at the inquiry, since I watched you fight for your life while I hid behind propriety. Celeste. I'm miserable, Elara. Have been for years. He's not cruel, not violent. He's just absent, uninterested. I'm a decoration in his house, nothing more. She looked up with red-rimmed eyes. I don't have your courage. I can't fight the way you did, but I can't keep living like this either. Elara sat beside her sister, took her hand. What do you need? I don't know. A place to stay while I figure things out? Maybe just someone who won't judge me for failing at marriage. You're not failing. You're choosing yourself. There's a difference. Celeste started crying, not delicate tears, but deep, wrenching sobs. Elara held her, and for the first time in their lives, they were actually sisters, not competitors, not the pretty one and the smart one, just 2 women trying to navigate an impossible world. You can stay here as long as you need, Elara said. We have plenty of empty rooms. Thank you. Celeste pulled back, wiped her eyes. I saw what you built here, what you and Dorian created together. I want that. Maybe not exactly that, but something real, something mine. Then we'll help you find it. Over the following months, the estate became something unexpected, a refuge. Celeste stayed, helping with household management and slowly finding her own strength. 2 other women arrived, both fleeing unhappy marriages, drawn by rumors of a place that didn't judge. They worked in the gardens, learned bookkeeping, gradually rebuilt themselves. Elara hadn't planned to create a sanctuary, but apparently that's what happened when you refuse to accept the world's limitations. The official recognition came in August. A delegation from the county seat arrived, led by the new magistrate, a younger man who'd built his reputation on anti-corruption work. He shook Dorian's hand formally, then turned to Elara. Mrs. Blackthorne, I wanted to personally thank you for exposing the Norton situation. We've implemented new verification procedures for evidence as a direct result. That's good to hear. I also wanted to offer you a position. We're creating a civilian oversight board for magistrate decisions. We need people who aren't afraid to ask difficult questions. Your name came up repeatedly. Elara glanced at Dorian, who was trying not to smile. I'm not qualified. You exposed a conspiracy that fooled half the county's legal establishment. I'd say you're overqualified. The magistrate pulled out a document. No pressure, but the offer stands if you're interested. After he left, Elara stood in the courtyard holding the official appointment letter. Are you going to accept? Dorian asked. I don't know. It's a lot of responsibility. You thrive on responsibility. I also have an estate to help run. We have an estate, and we have help now. You could do both.
Elara thought about the girl she'd been, invisible, dismissed, convinced she had nothing to offer. That girl would have refused out of fear, out of certainty that she didn't belong in positions of authority. But she wasn't that girl anymore. "I'll do it," she said, "but only part-time. This place comes first." This place will always come first, for both of us. She took the position. Spent 2 days a week in the county seat, reviewing cases, questioning evidence, making sure justice was actually being served. The other 5 days she was home, managing the estate, arguing with Dorian, building something that mattered. Life settled into a rhythm that was never quite peaceful, but was always purposeful. 2 years after the trial, Elara stood in the completed library surrounded by books and afternoon light. The estate was thriving, 12 tenant families, a profitable mill, crops that were actually yielding. The house was beautiful in its imperfection, showing the bones of what it had been and the promise of what it was becoming. Dorian found her there, as he often did. "Hiding?" he asked. "Thinking." "Dangerous." She smiled. "I was remembering the first time we met. You called me a liar. You were lying." "I was. About being fine with invisibility. About not caring." She turned to face him. "You saw through it immediately." "Wasn't hard. You radiated contained fury." "Did I?" "Still do sometimes. It's one of your best qualities." They'd been married for over 2 years now, had fought and built and struggled and survived together. The practical arrangement had become a partnership. The partnership had become friendship. The friendship had become... "I love you," Elara said. Dorian went very still. "What?" "I love you. I don't know when it happened. Somewhere between the courtroom and the mill renovation and the 100 small moments in between, but it's true. You don't have to say that. I know I don't. That's why I am." She moved closer. This wasn't supposed to be a love story. It was supposed to be practical, strategic, but somewhere along the way it became real. He cupped her face in his hands, thumbs brushing her cheekbones. "I've loved you since the garden. Since you told me you weren't hiding and I knew you were lying. Since you stood up in that courtroom and faced down everyone who'd ever dismissed you. That's very romantic for a soldier. I contain multitudes." He kissed her, and it felt like coming home, like choosing and being chosen, like everything hard and real and worth fighting for. When they broke apart, Elara rested her forehead against his. "We did it," she whispered. "We actually did it." "Did what?" "Survived. Built something real. Proved them all wrong." "You proved them wrong. I just provided the convenient scandal. You provided the courage, the model, the proof that different was possible." They stood together in their library, in their house, on their land. Outside, the estate hummed with life. Workers in the fields, families in the tenant houses, the mill wheel turning steadily. Inside, the walls they'd rebuilt held them safe. Elara thought about the girl she'd been, alone in a different library, reading about other people's lives because her own felt so small. That girl had dreamed of escape but never believed it possible. She wished she could go back and tell her, "You will survive this. You will find your strength. You will build something beautiful from nothing, and you will do it with someone who sees you, really sees you, and chooses you anyway." But she couldn't go back. She could only go forward. And forward was exactly where she wanted to be. "Come on," Dorian said, pulling her toward the door. "The new tenants are arriving this afternoon. You'll want to make them feel welcome. I'll want to negotiate fair contracts and make sure they're not being cheated." "Same thing." Not even remotely. They walked out together, bickering comfortably, and Elara felt something settle in her chest. Not happiness exactly. Happiness was too simple for what she felt. But rightness. Purpose. The bone-deep certainty that this life, hard as it was hers. She'd been overlooked, dismissed, underestimated. She'd used it all as fuel, and now she stood in a world she'd helped reshape, beside a man she'd chosen and who'd chosen her back, doing work that mattered. The aristocratic world that had rejected her was changing. Slowly, grudgingly, but changing. Her position on the oversight board was creating precedent. Other women were asking how they could get involved in governance. The old power structures were cracking. Elara Blackthorne,
The overlooked daughter, the invisible girl, the other one, had become someone impossible to ignore. Not because she was beautiful or charming or perfectly acceptable, but because she was relentlessly, unapologetically real. And in a world built on performance, authenticity was the most dangerous weapon of all.